There are so many forms of open guard, it can be overwhelming deciding which to focus on. Well, there's one guard that's easy to enter into and connects directly into most other forms of guard, and that is the collar sleeve guard, one of the most powerful guards in Gi Jiu-Jitsu. In this video, we're going to break down the collar sleeve guard and explain why you should learn it, even if you don't want to build your game around it. It's simple enough that a beginner can use it right away to surprise their training partners with submissions and sweeps, but at the same time, top-ranked black belts are using it against other black belts in competition, even though they've seen the position countless times before. We'll also explore why collar sleeve might just be the one guard to rule them all. And if you don't already know me, my name's Sean. I'm a BJJ black belt and a founder of the BJJ education app, Jiu-Jitsu, which if you wanted to check out, I put a link in the description with some free instructional content. By the way, all the instructional clips I'll be showing you in this video are from my friend, Danny Stolfi. Danny is a black belt under the legendary Mendes Brothers, Rafael, and Guy Mendes. He was one of the original practitioners to move out to train with them when they first opened up their Art of Jiu-Jitsu Academy. He has competed and trained at the highest levels, including world championships, ADCC training camps, and has used the collar sleeve successfully in competition. He's now the head instructor and co-owner of Breathe Jiu-Jitsu out in Long Island, New York. So before getting into some of the real strengths of the position, I just want to spend a few brief moments to define it, just in case you're not already familiar. So collar sleeve is a form of open guard where you have control of both the collar and the sleeve. The collar grip is a cross-collar grip here, and its primary purpose is to control posture and pull their head down. And at the same time, you want to trap their arm here with the sleeve grip. You want to have your elbow tight to the body. You want to make it very difficult for them to slip their elbow and pull it away. And this is important because this sleeve grip is used to set up different sweeps and submission attempts. And your leg on the same side of the sleeve grip, typically you want your foot on the hip position. Its primary purpose is used to control distance. And the right foot, you want it on the inside position of their bicep here up top. You want to keep it like a sticky hook. You want to follow them around, keep tension with this to keep that attachment. You can bring it to the hip if you need to. The ideal position, especially to set up some attacks, which we'll get into, is right here on the bicep.
I can use both of my feet to push into Mike. I can pull Mike and then slightly lift my hips off of the mat. So this is the proper tension that I need in this position. In all of my open guard positions, I want to be creating this kind of tension, okay? By pulling with the arms, pushing with the legs, and then lifting the butt slightly off the mat. I don't want to lift it too high to where I'm stacking myself, but I definitely don't want my hips just down. So I pull slightly, lift the hips slightly, okay, and I push into him with my legs.
And your opponent, they're typically going to grab you back, with this foot on the bicep, they're going to grab you on the pants here. And their other hand with the sleeve grip is typically just going to grab your same side collar. Neither of these grips are really threatening. They're just reactionary to try to make it more difficult for you to attack. And they could be on their knees or they could be standing, but from both positions, you have offensive options available to you. And if you can just get someone into this position, it's a really compromised position here. You can see how his arm is extended away from his body. Meanwhile, his posture is broken. And then there's all these different points of connection. You can use the trap limbs and off balance them. And if you're a beginner or maybe a closed guard specialist, the collar sleeve guard is a really good entry point if you want to start working on your open guard.
I would personally recommend, after working on your closed guard, if you want to get into an open guard game, I would recommend starting with collar and sleeve. The reason I think that it's like the best starting place is because it's a familiar set of grips that we often use in the closed guard.
Once you have the cross collar grip and sleeve grip established from closed guard, it's then a really easy transition to go to the open collar sleeve guard.
I open my guard now. If I have the mobility to do so, I'll step my feet on the hips. I'll scoot back. And then I would also advise stepping a foot on the bicep as well. If I don't have the mobility to just step right on the hips, it's okay to practice stepping the feet on the mat, scooting the hips back, and then stepping on the hips. Now from here again, stepping on the bicep is going to be important for preventing him from stepping over and knee slide passing me right away.
Keep all these positional details in mind as they lay the foundation for the attacks and transitions we're going to cover later in this video. Now let's talk about all the sweeps and submissions you can pull off from the collar sleeve guard. And in my opinion, this is where the collar sleeve guard truly shines. I mean, think about it. With this arm trapped, then they're in an outstretched position here with your foot inside. You're just one step away from a triangle choke.
I'm stretching my training partner out, lifting my hips up slightly, pulling him, and pushing my feet into him. Now, I continue to lift my hips up into him as I take my right leg, in this case, the foot that's on the bicep, that's the one that's always gonna go over first. I take that over his neck, but then notice on this left side how I keep my foot planted on his hip. This is gonna assist me in keeping my hips bridged up to him. What I never wanna do is just throw both feet off at the same time and then try to just lock my ankles. What I wanna make sure I do is I wanna make sure I lift my hips up and keep my hips lifted up as I'm adjusting, either to lock a full triangle right away or to just lock myself at the ankles here.
Of course, triangles aren't the only submission available from collar sleeve. Omoplata sequences are also very common. And to show you an example in competition, we have Nicholas Meregali here on bottom. He has a really good collar sleeve, and you can see him here with those grips we've talked about.
That collar sleeve here with that left foot on the bicep will allow him to lift his hips right up into the armpit and potentially go after the omoplata again.
And with his right foot out here, if he can bring his knee outside, then he has a clear path to the omoplata.
He's got the inside with the leg. Yeah, he's got the position.
The longer that Muhammad stays there with his elbow out,
yeah,
you know, he's going to get caught. And once again, we see this omoplata position here. Needs to get his head up, needs to get his...
Eventually, he's able to use this omoplata to set up an arm lock and then pull off a really slick back take.
It'll allow him to put pressure on the shoulder. There he's good. There he's hooked it.
Oh, this is bad news. This is bad news. Switching to the elbow. Muhammad Ali manages to take it out, but to the back. Incredible transition from Nicholas Meregali.
And then eventually Meregali is able to set up a cross collar choke from the back, isolating that arm there. And he gets the submission win. Of course, the triangle and the omoplata aren't everything that's available from the collar sleeve position. For example, recently on this channel, we covered the shotgun arm lock. And there are many sweeps available from this position, given you have these 4 points of connection, and them overextended and their posture broken. For example, one threat that always exists in this position, if you can bring their head lower than their hips and pull them towards you, you can bring them over into the overhead sweep. And because of this sweep and the threat of them being taken overhead, typically they're going to try to move backwards and disconnect from you, and you can use that momentum to also set up a bunch of different sweeps. So collar sleeve is really effective, and you could use this position alone as a foundation for your guard game. But what if you could use collar sleeve to transition to almost any other guard in jiu-jitsu? That's exactly what we're going to talk about now. And to explain what that means, if we were to draw out a map of some of the more fundamental guards in jiu-jitsu, we have things like closed guard, de la Riva, lasso, spider guard, standard single leg X or Ashi, butterfly. Then finally, we have the collar sleeve guard. Now that we have our positions, we can then draw lines representing different techniques to transition from each guard to collar sleeve. And then we easily could add transitions from how to go from collar sleeve to each one of these guards. By the way, drawing out positions and techniques like this is a useful exercise if you haven't done anything like this before. It helps make sense of your jiu-jitsu and discover different connections and gaps in your game. If you're a software engineer like myself, or just happen to be a database nerd, you might recognize what we've created here as a directed graph. And this is just a way you can think of jiu-jitsu, with each node representing a different position and then each arrow representing a different transition or technique to move between them. For example, if we take a look back at our jiu-jitsu graph, how might we transition from spider to standard single leg X? Well, based on the paths that we've mapped out, we can transition from spider to collar sleeve and then to standard single leg X. And what makes the collar sleeve a hub of open guards in gi jiu-jitsu is that there are clear and obvious transitions that exist between it and all the other open guards. The Hawk Tua girl recently talked about the collar sleeve on her podcast, Talk Tua, where she said,
"Personally, I love to use the collar sleeve guard to transition between my two favorite guards, De La Riva and Lasso guard. Of course, I'm also always on the hunt for any easy submissions when transitioning through using the collar sleeve. Wait a minute, I don't want to tell you my entire game plan."
All right, then, keep your secrets.
Before we get into one key detail and missing piece that ties this whole system together, if you haven't noticed already, all the instructional footage I've been showing you is from a course available on Jiu-Jitsu called Open Guard Fundamentals by Danny Stolfi. The course goes into the fundamentals of all the open guards shown in our Jiu-Jitsu graph we created, including attacks and submissions for each. But most importantly, it includes details on the most fundamental skills of all for the open guard. These include how to keep your opponent off balance and retention drills for when they find their base and initiate a guard pass. And lastly, if you're enjoying this video, please subscribe because I have many more like it planned for the future. So now that we have our graph of open guard positions with collar sleeve at its center, this leaves the question, how do we actually get into our collar sleeve guard during a match? Well, the good news is, and another one of the strengths of the collar sleeve guard is that there's plenty of opportunities to enter directly into the position, whether you're standing or on the knees.
Starting in my good stance, opening the collar, making the cross collar and sleeve grips. As I step forward, lowering my hips. The main difference in this guard pull versus when I pull guard to close guard is going to be that I don't really need to step first on his hip. What I would advise is to learn how to step the foot right to the bicep, and also ask your training partner to just make sure that they stand up and don't fall on you. Sometimes when you're newer, your training partner will just fall on you when you step on their bicep instead of their hip. So I'll just ask my training partner, Mike, to just please don't fall on me as I step forward. Instead of reaching this foot right to the hip, I just point it right up to his bicep like so. The other foot will come right to his hip, like so. Now, I've prevented him from being able to just step right over and knee slide past me. This also makes it more difficult for him to just go ahead and leg drag me or Toriado past me around the outside of my guard.
And now with this in mind, we can add a node to our graph to show that we can enter into it from the standing position using the cross collar guard sit. And you can use pulling collar sleeve to attack solely from this position, or you can use the position as a gateway to transition to any other guard. For example, you may have figured out when starting jiu-jitsu, you might learn close guard first, but when you start from the knees or on the feet, you might have found out pretty quickly that it can be challenging to get people into close guard when starting a match. So to give you an example what this might look like, you might pull collar sleeve, then use the transition to get the close guard. So with everything we've outlined in this video, it should be clear why collar sleeve is such a great guard to learn for gi jiu-jitsu. Regardless of which style of guard you prefer, you can use the concepts we went over in this video to design your own game plan in a more thought out way. Also, I'm curious, what guards and positions are central to your game and how do you connect them? I'd love to know because it gives me ideas for future videos. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. That's all I have for today. Thank you for watching.